All right, let's bring into the show. We had him on a few weeks ago to promote the Old Timers Banquet. Then it got canceled because of snow because I opened my big mouth. And now we're joined by Skip Nipper with more on the banquet. Skip, we got a new date for the banquet. When is it?
Yeah, Joe, it's February the 6th, Sunday night, and Tommy John has told us he'll be there, even though we had to push the date out a little bit. So we're looking forward to that. Thanks for having me on, by the way.
Always, man. I love you, man. I love when you come on. I love your knowledge. We got a lot to talk to you about this morning. Let me ask you this. How do you get a Tommy John to come to the banquet?
Well, there's several ways. You can go through the Players Association, and there are a few agents out there that say they have certain players lined up, and you determine what your budget is and see how it fits in with the player. So, we've had a variety of players. Some we had to pay a little more, some we didn't have to pay at all. So, we'll take them however we can get them as long as we can afford it.
I know you were disappointed in the fact that the snow and the ice all happened that weekend, and now, but there's got to be a huge sense of relief now. You got another date. You got Tommy John coming. For now, everything seems to be smooth, and I'll shut my mouth about the weather.
Yeah, don't talk about that anymore. I'm glad I wasn't pitching a perfect game. But we've had a few more ticket sales, so undoubtedly February 6th works for people. We haven't had anybody tell us they're not coming that has purchased a ticket. So we're looking for about 425, and we can seat a few more if we need to. Everyone's invited, and tickets are easily available at otbaseball.com, and click on the Purchase or Donate tab, and you can purchase your ticket.
I love it. What's funny, Skip, about baseball, me growing up here, we had a few baseball players here and there that, got to the minor leagues and all that. But now we're seeing so many players, Skip, from our area that make it to the major league. I know Vanderbilt has a lot to do with that, but I don't consider Vanderbilt, to me, the local scene with guys that grow up here. Why do you think we've had so many of these great players now have made it? I mean, we had the Cy Young Award winner from last year, went to Brentwood High School, and Robbie Ray. Why do we have so many great players in this area now?
You know why? Because we have so many great coaches in the Nashville, in the Tennessee area. These guys are dedicated. There are lots of teams. Travel teams has changed the dynamics of baseball away from Little League and Babe Ruth League. But we have great coaches. You don't hear much talk about people not getting good coaching. We have good facilities, and that really makes a difference.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. Funny, I did a chili cook-off the other night, and the guy next to me was Jake Rucker, who from Pope John Paul went to Tennessee. He got drafted by the Twins. He leaves to go to camp on February the 7th. That's when I saw the 6 come up. It reminded me of that, and we were talking about that, and he's the same way. It's like, it's year-round now. We got these great coaches who played the game and know the game exactly what you're talking about, and there's so many burgeoning prospects around, Skip. I mean, it's hard to keep up with all of them.
It is, and there's always a place for them to play, even at the collegiate level with so many junior colleges. And, of course, we got a bunch of colleges. We've got several right here in Nashville, but throughout the state of Tennessee. So there's plenty of places to play. You mentioned February the 7th. He may not report February the 7th based on the lockout. But one of the reasons we always enjoyed having our banquet in January, because it was easier to bring players in. So, it's a little bit of different things for us in February, but, hey, it's going to work out just great.
Let me ask you this, Skip, who's your all-time favorite baseball player?
Oh, Mickey Mantle. I grew up with Mickey Mantle. He was my hero, and I think it's hard for me to imagine him not being on the tips of everyone's tongues that grew up in the age that I did as one of their favorites. But there are others. Willie Mays he's one of the greatest ball players of all time, and I enjoyed watching him. And of course, the great Henry Aaron. Hank Aaron was just terrific, and he was easy to watch because we got TBS broadcasts into the Nashville area, and so we saw a lot of Braves games. So those are my top 3, I think.
It's funny because I was going to lead into my growing up in the 80s with TBS and WGN. It's almost like you had to choose which team you wanted, and I choose the Braves, and I go with Dale Murphy. Mm-hmm. And you might have heard us earlier. I get so, I don't know, upset's not a word, but I just get chafed that Dale Murphy is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He's the only 2-time back-to-back MVP that's not in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And I know he doesn't have the 500 home runs, and I know I'll go on this rant every time that I talk about Dale Murphy, but Skip, he needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and there are others too. The Hall of Fame, it's kind of a broken system. When Jackie Robinson retired, 5 years later, he was up for the Hall of Fame, he and Bob Feller. There were 160 votes placed. You had to get 75% of them to get in. Bob Feller made it easily. Jackie Robinson made it by 4 votes. So it's a broken system. optimism, and I heard you talking earlier about Barry Bonds. What doesn't make sense to me, I had a conversation last week. Bud Selig is in. Bud Selig knew that there was shenanigans going on with some of these players, such as Barry Bonds. How can you keep Barry Bonds and some of these other guys out? And with gambling now being, Major League Baseball has got their thumb on gambling now. How can you leave Shoeless Joe Jackson or Pete Rose? Maybe not bring them in the regular channels, but there should be some channel for them to be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, I totally agree with you. So today, when they make that vote, you know what, Skip, it made me mad a few years ago when nobody got elected to the Hall of Fame. And I went on a rant against baseball writers because I'm thinking, there's one person that you could put in the Hall of Fame, and they put nobody in there. So today's up for happened today. Barry Bonds, Clemens, and David Ortiz. Do all three deserve to get in, Skip, in your opinion?
Oh, I think they deserve to get in, but I don't think they will. Ortiz probably will. Seems to be at the top of everyone's list. But, even he had some things that went on in his life, in baseball life. He said a bad word after the bombing in Boston on the field. And, it's just, it's hard to know what sports writers are thinking. But, it's time to bring some of these players in that have been pushed away. And I don't think that's right.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that. What's this like for you, Skip? There's no baseball until basically 1st of March.
Well, I'm researching every day something usually about Nashville baseball or baseball in Tennessee or something about the old Negro Leagues has gotten a lot of my attention lately. I think it's fascinating because it was put on the back burner for so long, and to be able to dig up information about that is a joy to me.
Oh, I love when you bring up stuff from the Negro Leagues back in the day because it was so underrated. So many great players that played in those leagues. It is, and you're giving love to all that, Skip. And that's the first reason I followed you is because of all that you were doing. And it's more than a passion for you, isn't it?
It is, and it's one of these days I like to publish a little bit more of it than I do just on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, but I just have a passion for it. It's something I can do. When I retired 6 years ago, I'd already begun to do research, and I just find it fascinating. The hard part about it is going down a rabbit hole. You see something in the lower corner of a newspaper that you weren't looking for, and you get interested in that, and you kind of move around. So I've got lots of projects. I've got a lot of Word documents that are open.
How do you find stuff with the baseball in Nashville, go back to the 30s and 40s? It's not like you can Google things and it pops right up. I mean, there's a lot of legwork you got to do with this.
Yeah, and there's a group. I'm a member of SABR, SABR.org is their website, Society for American Baseball Research. And through that membership, there are lots of opportunities for research, things that I can use as a tool to research. But there are also groups. For example, there's a dead ball era group, and there's a Negro Leagues group, and there's a minor leagues group, and you can always go to those groups and pose a question. You're going to get an answer, and you're going to get one that's right because there are other guys, a lot of guys, a lot better than I am at research that you can count on to give you information.
I love it. And, it's funny. We talk about sometimes, the Mount Rushmore of people in Nashville who would you put up there that had a positive impact. And Larry Schmittou bringing the sounds back in the late 70s and kind of revitalizing baseball in an area. I think he goes up immediately.
Yeah, hands down, the most influential personality in Nashville baseball is Larry Schmittou. There were others along the lines of Larry Gilbert back in the 40s, who was the manager here, half owner of the Nashville Vols. He was great. Everybody loved him. There are lots that we don't know about, and that's what I enjoy looking at too, is trying to come up with some of those figures.
Amazing. All right, the Old Timers Banquet next weekend, February the 6th. Tickets still available. You sold some extra ones, which is great. Yeah. Also, you got to ask Tommy John. I know he's been asked this 1,000 times, but what's it like to have that surgery named after you? I mean, I'm sure he's been asked that, and whether he likes it or not.
Joe Casey, our former police chief, I sat down with him not long ago. In 1950, he suffered an arm injury, and he was with the Boston Braves, and they sent him to Nashville, and they took out his adenoids and his tonsils because of his arm injury. And he said, what if I had an opportunity to have had Tommy John surgery back in 1950? I may have had a baseball career, not been police chief. I said, right. Well, you went where you were supposed to be, supposedly, but anyway, it turned out pretty good for him.
Heck yeah, dude. He's a legend too. That's great. I love Chief Casey. Skip, thank you again. We'll promote it next week. We'll get the good word out, and anything you need, let me know, buddy.
You come. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
I'll do it. Thank you, buddy. I'll see you next week.
Thanks.
All right, Skip Nipper. He is Mr. Baseball in Nashville. You can at Mr. Sulfurdale. You can find him on Twitter. He's a great follow. If you like history, he's the guy to follow for baseball history in Nashville.